Hello, hello. My name is April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Jason Dion with me. He is a cybersecurity expert and owner of his own business with 23 employees in 6 different countries. It's pretty amazing. Often lives in Puerto Rico, currently is in Orlando. Jason, why don't you take it away?
I'm happy to be here today, talk with you and talk with your audience about working from home and some of the pitfalls that I see people run into. For us as a company, as you said, we've got 23 people right now on staff across 6 countries, and we are a remote first company. Just this year, we finally got an office building, and so some of us in Orlando, we will come into the office, but in general, almost everybody we have is work from home. And we've seen what works and what doesn't based on people and their personalities and all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm sure we'll talk all about that today.
I mean, that's exactly what we're all about here. Would you say that since you now have the office in Orlando, that you find yourself going there half the time, more than half the time, less than half the time?
So me personally, I tend to go there most work days now. Actually, today I'm in my home office right now, which is why my lighting is not as good as normal. But yeah, I'm going to be heading to the office right after we're done with this interview. I tend to go there. For me, it helps me separate my work from home and give me a little bit more balance. I'm sure you know this from working from home. Sometimes it's hard to turn it off at the end of the day. And for me, having that office where I actually physically get in the car and drive to the office, that kind of starts and ends my day a little bit more definitively. In the past, I've done things like having my own home office, so that way it's at least going into a separate place and try to only use that during working hours and things. But I think it's one of the biggest problems we find with work from home is it's hard to shut off sometimes because it's always there. You're always at the office because your office is your home.
But you're still remotely working with all of your employees, right?
Yes. Yeah. So in the office, the only people who really go to the office on a daily basis is our executive team. So it's me, the CEO. I'm the CEO, my COO, my chief operations officer, and then our other lead in the executive area. We all kind of get together at least a couple of times a week. And then the rest of the team, all of our workers and all of our employees and team members, they're able to work from home. They're not required to come into the office.
Yeah, I worked in a really similar situation to that when I was working for Mayo Clinic up in Minnesota. And we did have on-site location that originally everyone worked there.
Yeah.
I got hired, and just as they started letting people work remotely, and there's so about half the team, in the end, the only people that were on site were the IT team.
Yeah.
The people who were basically issuing the computers and bringing them in. And then if there were like power outages, people could come into drop-in stations. Do you have like a kind of a drop-in situation for some people?
Exactly. That's how we've set up our office. So in our offices, it's a rather small office. It's a small 2-story building, about 2,000 square feet. The upstairs is all of our video production and sound booth studio. So we've got 2 sound booths and a video production booth up there for us to do, full green screen with lights and cameras and all that fun stuff. And then downstairs, we've got the 3 executive offices, a break room, a small bathroom, a conference room, a lobby, and then there's an overflow room where we have 5 desks. So like the last 2 weeks, one of my instructors had flown in from Delaware where he lives. And while he was there, he was working in the overflow office and then going upstairs when he needed to record and then go back to the overflow. So essentially, we've got each of our overflow desks just set up with mouse, keyboard, and a desktop monitor, and they can just bring their laptops and plug
Like
right
a
in.
docking kind of situation.
Exactly. Makes it easy.
Is it a house? Is your office a house?
No, we're in a condo park. So there's an office condo park here in Orlando that we bought a unit in.
Okay.
So up until this point, for the last 5 years, everything has been done like out of my house. But as we've grown the company, we decided we needed an actual studio because when people are flying in to film, it's kind of weird to be like, hey, yeah, come on, tramp through my living room. Let's go up to the office in the other room.
Yeah.
So having a dedicated space is kind of nice for that.
I have never had anyone come into my little recording studio here because I'm in my bedroom closet, and you would have to come through my bedroom, through my bathroom, into my closet, and that's not going to ever happen.
Yeah, so like, that kind of thing makes it kind of awkward, right? So it's like, well, in those cases, it helps to have an actual location to go to.
Yeah.
But I mean, that said, like the setup we have there in the office is pretty much the same as what we had in my spare bedroom when I had it in my home office, at least the studio. It's all the same equipment and stuff. So it's something that could be done from home. We just decided to have a physical office so people aren't coming to my house.
What kind of stuff are you recording? It sounds like recording is a really big part of your business?
Yeah, so at Dion Training, our big products we make are video recordings. So we make courses on how to pass IT exams and cybersecurity certification exams and project management exams. So things like PMP and PRINCE2 and ITIL and Security Plus and all that kind of stuff. And so everything we do is based around videos as kind of our primary way of teaching people. So generally, up until this point, it was me on the screen, and then I have a whole team that does the editing and the graphics and the publication, the marketing and all of that. We've now expanded the team, so we now have 3 instructors, so it's me plus 2 others. And then the rest of the team still does all the other back end stuff. So that's why video is such an important thing for us, because it's always, somebody on screen in front of a green screen teaching, and then graphics and things are popping up to tell them what they're learning.
And you have like a video editing team that's doing that too, or are you guys manning all of the post work?
Yeah, so we have our own full production studio. So we have right now we have 3 editors, 2 quality assurance, 3 production assistants, and then that's our production team. Then the other side of the business, we have our customer support team, and we've got 4 or 5 people there who answer emails, take phone calls and chats and all that stuff to support anybody who has questions. And then the other part of our team is our instructor team, which works on writing scripts and practice exams and stuff like that. So it's kind of how we've broken up our company, is into production, student support, and then the instructors.
And are you working with like contractors or these employees?
So they're all employees of the company. Well, all of the Americans are employees. All of the international folks are contractors.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a mix, but they are treated as employees based on, they basically get paid the same, treated the same, all that kind of good stuff. Mm-hmm. For us, there's not really a distinction, except that the IRS makes a distinction.
Right. Okay. Okay. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to actually read your bio probably, and as well as your I asked in my guest interest form if you have any credentials or achievements or anything like that, and to just spare Jason from having to say it all himself, I'm going to do you a favor and just read it. So Jason is a former naval officer and college professor who now works as the lead instructor and CEO of the Dion, help me out.
Dion Training.
I told you I have a friend whose last name is Dion. All right. Dion Training is a cybersecurity, IT service management, and project management certification training company that helps people upskill into knowledge worker roles so that they can work in an office, at home, or on the go. Jason has worked as a network engineer, director of network operations and security center, and an information systems officer for large organizations around the globe. These days, he runs a remote first company with 23 team members and spread across 6 countries. But the other part is, you just got to listen to this. Jason has multiple information technology professional certifications, including certified information system security professional. I don't know if I should say all the acronyms as well. Certified ethical hacker, which sounds really cool. Certified network defense architect, digital forensic examiner, digital media collector, CYSA plus, security plus, network plus, A plus, PRINCE2 practitioner, and ITIL.
Yes.
And there's a master's of science degree in there in information technology with a specialization in information assurance. And so you often live in Puerto Rico with your wife and kids, but now you're in Orlando. So, all right, let's unpack some of this. You want to talk about the part where you live first?
Sure. So we're actually in the middle of a transition. So we were living down in Puerto Rico. That's where our company was headquartered. We're currently in the process of switching over. And in 2023, we'll be moving to Orlando full-time with the company and with my family. So this year has kind of been, I've been kind of half and half as I've been going between the two. But I do most of the work still in Puerto Rico. And when I'm in Orlando right now, most of the time it's just dealing with houses and kids and that kind of stuff as we're moving up and getting all the legal stuff that needs to be done to move the company from Puerto Rico to being a Florida company and all that, that fun stuff. So that's why we're kind of like in between both places right now, because it's just kind of a shift between the two.
When you were in Puerto Rico, is that when you had people coming into your home, or is it the Orlando home, or did you have 2 homes?
No, so in Puerto Rico is where they were. It was one of my spare bedrooms was turned into. We had one bedroom was an office, one bedroom was a studio, and then we had bedroom for the kids and bedroom for us. Mm-hmm. And so people, like when they would come in as instructors, we put them in a hotel down the street and then pick them up and bring them to the house every day. This is just kind of awkward. So when we get back to America, we're like, we're not going to do that. Yeah.
All right. So what came first, naval officer or college professor?
Naval officer. So I joined the Navy back in 2002 after 9/11. I joined the US Navy. I was a nuclear reactor operator for about 4 years. Got my college degree done, and I switched over to the officer side. When I switched to the officer side, I became a what we call an information professional, which is basically a cybersecurity and IT officer. So I ran all the satellite farms and all the large networks at lots of different organizations around the world, and I did that for about 20 years. At about my 12 to 13 year point, I wanted to become a military professor. And at the Naval Academy, they have a program called PMP, which is the Permanent Military Professor Program. And to be able to get selected for that, generally they want you to have teaching experience. So I went and got a side job working nights and weekends at the local colleges and universities near me. So I started becoming a college professor there, trying to move into this military college professor program. Ultimately, I never ended up going into the military college professor program. I stayed in just the civilian side of things. And when I moved positions from one place to another, I moved to a heavy travel position. So I couldn't teach in person anymore for colleges because I was, I wouldn't know if I was going to be there every Monday and Wednesday or things like that. So I switched to an online university for a while. And then I switched to teaching online through video using sites like Udemy and LinkedIn Learning. And that was kind of the birth of Dion Training. And we kind of started this as a side hustle, thinking, hey, if I can get this up to like half my Navy pay when I retire, then I wanted to get a real job when I get out. And instead, by the time like within 12 months, I'd already like matched my Navy salary, and I started finding I just wasn't enough hours. So I started hiring on other people to help me. And for the first 5 years of the company, everybody was full-time except for me. I was the only part-timer. So it was kind of strange that I was the one who owned the company. I was the only one who was half invested in it. Everybody else was fully invested in it. But yeah, over the last 5 years, we've grown from me doing everything myself to me and my wife, where she started doing all the video editing while I was on screen. Then we started hiring other assistants and other people, and we just kind of grew the team from there.
We should have brought your wife in then. Oh my goodness. So there's a lot there. Udemy, did that end up paying off? Because I've looked at that before.
Yeah, so for us, it works out really, really well. The thing with Udemy is just like most things, right? If you want to self-publish on Amazon, right? There's some people who make really good money self-publishing a book on Amazon, and other people, they self-publish a book and they make $10 a month, right? Udemy is much the same way. I would say that, 50%, 60% of the people are probably making less than $50 a month. So for those people, it's like, man, this sucks. I'm not good at all. And then there's some people who are making a decent wage, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month, which, again, is good money. It can replace a full-time job. And then there's kind of that upper, 1 or 2% that are making, $1 million plus a year. And for us, we've done pretty well with it to the point where we've been able to hire on additional people, and we work together, and we have lots of courses on Udemy. We've got about 35 courses, I think, right now on Udemy. And some of them do, a couple $100 a month. Some of them do a couple thousand. I have one that does 10,000 plus per month. And so, depending on your topic and the size of your reach, Udemy can really be useful. But it can also be very difficult because there are 40,000 other instructors on there. And so,
Right.
why are they going to get your course versus somebody else's course? And there's some of that first mover advantage and things like that go into it.
And there's a few others that are similar. I think there's like Skillshare. Did you look into that one too?
Yeah, so I have friends who are on Skillshare, LinkedIn Learning, Pluralsight. There's a bunch of them out there. For me personally, I was on a bunch of different sites from 2018 to about 2019. And what we found was that Udemy paid us the best and was the best experience to work with. And Udemy has a program called Udemy Business, which is their subscription program in addition to their marketplace. And if you're part of Udemy Business, you can't sell your stuff on other sites unless you own that site. So what we did was we have an exclusive with Udemy for Udemy Business, so we don't sell on the other platforms anymore, and we've let our courses lapse on those other places.
Sure.
But we only sell it now on Udemy or our site. And the way we've broken that up is Udemy is kind of our low price offering because they tend to have a very, for those who don't know, Udemy tends to be $10, $15, $20 for a course. And then on our site, we have our premium offerings, which take the Udemy videos and Udemy quizzes and add additional practice exams, hands-on labs, and the exam vouchers and textbooks. And those sell for, $400, $500, $600 per course. So it's a different offering, even though a lot of the content is the same. And that model has worked out well for us so that we're not fighting Udemy because they can obviously outspend us on marketing. And so if I try to do like a Google keyword for Jason Dion Security Plus, I'm going to be fighting Udemy for that. And they can obviously outspend me. So they're going to win the keyword, even though it's my own name.
So it's kind of like the trial version on Udemy and then like the full paid version on your site.
It's not necessarily a trial version because it still is the full version. So the course on Udemy, for instance, for Security Plus, it's still 25 hours of video,
Okay.
and it comes with one practice exam. But on our site, it comes with the 25 hours of video. It comes with 6 practice exams, which have over 700 questions. It comes with a study guide. It comes with a textbook. It comes with hands-on labs where you can go in and do things on the computer and get tested to make sure you know how to do the job. For instance, if it says, hey, let's reset a user's password, this will show you how to go into a Windows server and reset the password. And so it's a little bit more hands-on and in-depth with our version. Everything, the Udemy version is enough to pass the exam, but our version takes that to the next level, helps you pass the exam and learn how to do the job in the marketplace.
And are they trying to sit for an exam, like an external exam from yours?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So all the things we teach are for third-party certifications.
Like
So we
study
do a lot of
guides.
stuff with CompTIA, and they do things like the A+, which is hardware and software, Network Plus, which is networking, Security Plus, which is intro to cybersecurity. And once they pass that exam, they get that certified designator, just like you were reading at the beginning of the episode with all the different designations I have. And that's only a partial list of all my designations. But for each of those, you basically can get a textbook or a video course, you could study it, and then you take the official test. And once you pass that, you then earn that certification.
Got it. Are you finding that I interviewed a gentleman a few months ago now, and I can't remember the name of his company off the top of my head, so I don't want to mess it up. But they train people in IT things like cloud server stuff.
Yep.
And I'm gonna be sad if I can't remember his name now. It was Yellow. Oh dear. It's like Yellowtail, I think, like the wine, but not.
Okay.
And they find a lot of people that are just trying to get out of their, old job, looking for something that they could do from home. Like,
we have a huge amount of our students who come from that mentality, right? They're like, hey, I'm doing something and it's a physical job and I don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
I had one person on our podcast, I think it was last week's episode, that we're talking to this guy, Mike Hillman, who was a truck driver, and he decided that he didn't want to be a truck driver anymore because he didn't want to be over the road and everything with the pandemic and everything else that was going on. And so he took our courses, he got a certification, and now he works as a cybersecurity analyst, and he does it as a work from home online. So his commute is from his bedroom to his office across the house, and he's able to do that from home no matter where. And he doesn't have to worry about, getting sick and being exposed to, viruses and other people and horrible drivers that cut people off in trucks and all that fun stuff.
So dangerous. Yeah. And like this other gentleman was saying, like teachers and nurses and everybody. So like, are you seeing like a really wide variety of people? You said a truck driver.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's one of the things is that always amazes me is where people come from when we start talking with our students and what their previous careers were.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we really focus on is helping people make the transition into a new cybersecurity career, because getting the first job is really the hardest part. In the cybersecurity world, there are no real entry-level jobs. So you really have to come from some other place first. And usually it comes from an IT realm, but there's other ways you can do it too. For example, we had one person, one of our students, Michelle, she had a master's in marketing. She was a marketing person and she'd done that for 15 years. She was getting kind of tired of it, but she didn't want to start all the way over at the beginning as working at like the help desk for, $8 an hour or $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And so what we helped her do was basically a lateral transfer. So at her current pay band, but into a relevant job that was touching the cybersecurity industry. So nobody wanted to hire her initially as a technical person because she didn't have a background to say, hey, I've done this in my other jobs. But what she was able to do was get a job doing cybersecurity awareness and cybersecurity training at a large company. And over the next 6 to 12 months, they're training her into one of the more technical positions that she really wanted to be in. But she's able to use her marketing and communication skills to be able to get that job and do this kind of two-way transfer, right? You goes into the first job, do that for 6 to 12 months, and then she can be in the more technical job that she was really looking at. And the benefit of doing that instead of starting in a more technical job at a junior level was that she was able to keep her current pay, which was, up in the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 per year instead of $8 per hour working at a help desk. And so a lot of times you can do those type of things. I see a lot of people when they come from a traditional job into a work from home job, they will just try to take the same job they were doing and do it in a work from home manner. And that works fine sometimes. And a lot of times that can be a great way to start your own freelance or side hustle. If you're a graphic designer, you can, go start being a graphic designer from home, right? If you're a video production person, you can do the same thing from home. But some jobs just don't translate to doing it from home. If you were a nurse or a doctor, you kind of have to be there with your patient, right? There's a little bit of work from home with remote video calls and things like that these days, but most of that is going to be in person. Or, a traditional high school teacher, they have to go into the classroom every day. It's a little harder to do that from online.
Well, and I do find that some people, when they think of I'm on a few of the big groups in like say Facebook about, remote work, and almost all of them are call centers. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit, maybe concerning to me that people don't realize how vast, the opportunities really are. Like
Yeah,
if you,
I think that's kind of the first one that went online for work from home jobs was call centers. And it
yeah.
was because it was super easy to do,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I think back to my own mother, and she used to work for Carnival Cruise Lines as a travel agent. So if you called up, 1-800-CARNIVAL or whatever it was, you'd get her and she'd try to sell you a cruise. And she used to do that in a big office building down in Miami. And then they moved her to a work from home position back in like 2006 or 2007. And literally it was, they shipped her a computer with a phone and said, plug this into your high-speed internet, and the phone can ring there just as easily as it could in the office in Miami. And so people could work from home very easily doing those call center type jobs. What I've seen in the last 2 years, especially because of the pandemic, is this rapid movement towards work from home. And most of us don't want to go back to a regular office anymore. I'm kind of the unusual person that I actually wanted to go to an office. But because of that, a lot of jobs have started making it that you can work from home, or you could do a hybrid where you come in once a week, but the other 4 days you can work from home and things like that. And the technology is there nowadays that you can do almost probably 90% of the jobs out there from home. There's only a few that you really can. I mean, if you're going to work in an Amazon warehouse pulling parts, you kind of have to be at the warehouse.
Right. I know when I worked at Mayo Clinic, they didn't allow, I know that there were other like medical transcription companies that were doing remote work years, like maybe even a decade before we were. In 2008, they finally finished a pilot where they felt like they had it secure enough. And so that kind of comes into what you do. They needed patient confidentiality, and they did require us to work from a home office that was connected to Ethernet. We had to sit in our office that was designated, for our workspace, and we had to have 2 egresses and all the different things. It wasn't like just drag your laptop around the house. You couldn't do that, or go to any kind of coffee shop. So work from home has lots of different faces, I think. But so
that's a great point, because you were dealing with a very highly regulated industry as well, right? Because you were working in healthcare, and healthcare has rules such as HIPAA. And if you're not following those HIPAA rules, you can get fined or shut down. And so it's not, from a technology standpoint, it's really easy to say, here's a laptop, go home and work. But the data on that laptop now has patients' social security numbers, because that's what you bill them for insurance. It's got their names, their birth date, their medical conditions, all that private information. And that's really what you have to be concerned with, is how do you protect that? And what a lot of companies are doing now is they're not actually letting you access that data at home. Like it's not on your actual computer. It's just a VPN tunnel web browser. You're actually connecting to a virtual computer that's sitting at the Mayo Clinic, for instance, right? Even though I'm sitting at home, and the computer I'm using is actually the one in the office, not the one at my house. My one at my house is just to connect to that one. And that's one of the ways they overcome some of those security issues.
And we, over the course of the 10 years that I was doing that with them, we went through a few different iterations. There were originally one kind of computer, and then eventually it was VPN, and then later there was like, I can't remember what they call them. They were like little thin computers, thin clients that would connect.
Thin clients,
So it was just like every year or two, they'd just send us all different, we'd have to do trainings and everything. But yeah, they were training us to, even when you're in your own home office, you still have to lock your computer. Just the screen, you have to, all of the things, you can't just leave it running, because even, if there was an emergency and other people had to come into your home, you don't want them to see the private information on your screen.
Yep. Yeah. And with what we do with the certification exams, when the students want to go take their exam, they're able to do that from home and from their home office. Whereas back in 2020 and before, you couldn't do that. You had to go to a testing center because of the fact they were worried about somebody had to watch you and make sure you weren't cheating and all that kind of stuff. And the way they've done that is they've built the software now so that when you load up the exam software, it creates a secure tunnel between your computer and the testing center. They can then see through your webcam who else is in the room. You have to actually take your laptop and spin around in a circle and say, there's nothing on the wall. Like, I'm looking at you right now. You can see behind me, but you can't see what's on that wall. And so I can have all my notes up there to cheat on the exam. So they make you go and show them the entire room. And all those type of things that, they're overcoming the security concerns, but still allowing people to do it from home, even in these things that were never allowed to be at home. And, coming from the military, we were never a work from home place, right? The military was, you always had to go to the office, but COVID changed that. And they got to the point where it's like, okay, we started splitting up teams into, A teams and B teams, and the A teams would work from home this week, while the B teams were in the office, and then we would swap the next week.
Sounds like school. Sounds like
Yeah.
what they did with a lot of schools.
And because of that, they come up with all these different technology solutions that didn't exist because the military was always everything was sitting in their network at the office or on base. And to allow people to go home with it was very strange and a big culture shift for them. And I think that's one of the things with work from home, especially with larger companies, is if they're not used to doing it and they don't know how to support it, it can be a very, very difficult thing from a cultural perspective.
Yeah. Well, military and healthcare both have security,
Yes.
on the forefront. So are you still connected to the military in any way?
No, I'm retired now, so I don't work with them directly. We have a couple of contracts with some of the different services to provide some training here and there for different parts of the military, for them to get their certification exams, but not directly. Like we don't work directly for them anymore.
And you typically work with civilians. Do the certifications that you help people train for also apply to the military jobs?
They do, yeah. One of the biggest consumers of our courses and the certifications we teach is the military, because there's a thing called the DoD 8570, which says that anybody who works in IT in the military has to be certified with the equivalent civilian certification to the level of job. So if you're working as an IT administrator, you have to have your Security Plus. If you're working as a network administrator, you must have your Network Plus or your CCNA. If you're a cybersecurity person, you must have your CEH or CYSA. And those are all things we teach, right? So a lot of times the military will come to us and buy our courses for their students because we teach things they already need.
Earlier, you said something about, I think you had a student named Michelle who you helped, and you helped her get through the hoops to get into a same level pay job. What was it outside of the training that she did with you that helped her do that?
Yeah, so
you guys coach her through that?
Yeah, so one of the programs that we have is called Your Cyberpath Pro, and that's based on our podcast, which is Your Cyberpath. And Your Cyberpath Pro is a membership that we sign people up for. It's a 1-year program that includes mentorship. We cover everything with them in terms of cybersecurity, from picking the right job based on your personality and your DISC profile and things like that, finding jobs in your area that are going to be worthwhile for you, helping you with your resumes, helping you with your interviews, helping you with your negotiations, and then helping you be successful for your first, 6 to 9 months on the job to make sure you're ready to get the next promotion. And so that was the program that Michelle was in. And we worked with her through that whole thing, which was great. And we've had about 100 students go through that program. And that can be found at yourcyberpath.com is our podcast. We give all the free advice and stuff on the career side of it. And then we also have that upsell into the membership program. And the reason why we have that as a separate paid program is because, I currently on my Dion Training side have over 1 million students. And I just don't have enough time as one person to be able to answer all of their questions in career coaching and helping them with resumes and interviews and all that. So we created this program as a way between me and my co-instructor. Both of us have been hiring managers for decades to help people understand what the hiring process looks like from the other side of the table so they can get through the applicant tracking system, which is ATS, and how to write your resume and all that kind of stuff that a lot of people just never know how to do.
Absolutely. So for a price, you can get that coaching.
Yes.
And is it just the two of you that are offering that?
Yeah, so right now there's just the two of us, and that's why we keep it very limited on the number of people that we can let roll into the program. And so as people graduate out, then we bring in new people. So our next cohort for that will be launching in January is when we're going to be opening up enrollments again as we start aging out last year's candidates. Because again, we keep it very small, specifically because there is just two of us, and we don't want to just hire in an assistant to help you. We want somebody who knows what they're doing. And so the people that you're working with in this program are people who normally make, $300 an hour as a virtual CIO, for instance, right? My partner, that's what he does for a living. And so we had to have it at this program at a higher price to minimize the number of people and maximize the amount of time that we can spend with each individual.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it is a cohort. So you've got several people going through. Are the people that are joining this business development side, or whatever you're calling it, the coaching side, have they already completed certifications, or do they join that from the beginning where they're just getting started to have like guidance?
It depends on the person. So the majority of them have some certifications, but they may not have the right certifications. And that's the other challenge, right? So the way we've designed the program is that when you sign up, the first thing you do is you go through about 3 lessons of videos to help you figure out what different jobs are out there. Because a lot of people think cybersecurity, and the first thing they think of is hacker on a keyboard, the guy in the hoodie in the movies, right? And that's actually, that role is called a penetration tester. That role exists, but it's only one role in cybersecurity. There's 39 other roles. And so most people, that's what they think of. They don't think about all these other roles that exist. And so, as we've worked with students in the first cohort, we started finding that people are like, oh yeah, I want to be a penetration tester. And we start talking with them, and their personality and their past and the way that they like to work, none of that lines up with being a penetration tester. We're like, maybe you should be an IT auditor instead. And here's why. And so that's why we designed the program now, where we kind of introduce them to a bunch of the different jobs that exist in this world. And then the first thing we do is they meet with either myself or my partner, Kip, and we do a one-on-one coaching call with them to walk through what their background is, where they're trying to go, and basically map out, hey, here's the next 12 months of your life. And you have these certifications, but you're missing these certifications, or you have these skills, but you're missing these other skills. And based on the job you want, because there's not one set of certifications that works for every job. You basically have to figure out what it is you want to do, and then you can fill in your path of what are the things I need to do to get there. And so that's what we help them with as we move through, and then we step with them through the whole process to help them get hired and get them moved in.
And that personality thing that you're talking about, is that part of your coaching program, or is that something that you do at a baseline with all of your students?
So that's something we only do in the coaching program, because again, that requires an one-on-one, basically a one-on-one interview call between us and them. So that's usually 15 to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And with 1 million students, I just don't have enough time to do it for everybody.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So what kind of personality does work well with these kind of cybersecurity jobs? Or can you see out of the 40 different positions running the full gamut of all the personalities?
Yeah, it really does, right? So, for instance, I'll give you an example. I've had a lot of students who come from the accounting and bookkeeping world, right? And accountants and bookkeepers tend to be very detail-oriented, very checklist-oriented, and they like just, hey, give me the procedure and I will run down the list, right? Mm-hmm. That is a perfect personality, not for a penetration tester, but for an IT auditor. Okay. IT auditing is basically IT bookkeeping. We're going in and making sure you have your password configuration set properly and all your registries are set properly and that you've gotten all your security patches. And it's essentially a long checklist. So if I have a new server, there may be 3,000 things I need to do to make sure it's secure. And the IT auditor comes in and makes sure I did all 3,000 of them and check the box, right? On the other hand, if you're somebody who likes to communicate a lot and be around people, you might make a really good social engineering person because you're very communicative and you like talking on the phone and you like trying to get information out of people. Whereas like my wife, she is not that way. She doesn't want to call anybody. If you're not texting her, she's not answering the phone. So she'd be horrible in that job, right? And so those are the kind of things you have to figure out based on your personality and what your background is that you may be able to leverage. One of the things that we really focus on, especially in the career coaching program, is we don't take people who are brand new. So, and what I mean by that is like, if you just got out of high school and you're like, hey, I'm 18 years old, I got my high school diploma, I want to join your career coaching program, we're going to tell you no, because we can't help you. We need you to have at least some workplace experience doing something. And I don't care what that thing is. It could be accounting, bookkeeping, marketing, whatever. But if you have some job in the past and you've done that for at least a couple of years, we can help you land a higher level cybersecurity job, being able to basically lateral transfer in by identifying your transferable skills and then finding the right position for you based on those skills. But if you're coming straight out of high school, you don't have any transferable skills yet because you've not done anything in your life yet, right? And so that becomes a little bit more of a challenge.
Okay, so then you got people like me who just like to talk to people and ask questions. So how does that social engineering role fit into cybersecurity? That part I was...
Yeah, so social engineer is one of the things that we do inside of pen testing. So generally when we do pen testing, we are trying to break into an organization to find out what their weaknesses are. So if you think about your house, right? You have your house, you have, locks on your doors, you lock your windows, you've got little security cameras, you may have a ring system or whatever, right? You may hire some burglars to try to break in your house. And if they're able to, they'd say, okay, now that I broke in your house, I did it because I broke in because you didn't have a grate over your chimney. I was able to come down the chimney like Santa Claus, right? Or whatever it is, right? Part of that from the social engineering part is trying to get people to do what you want. And in an office environment, that may be getting somebody to use their badge to swipe in and get past the security gates, right? Mm-hmm. It may be asking them questions, getting information about their systems, so you can use that and pass that over to the technical hackers who are going to be able to break into it. For example, one of the common things is they'll call up and try to get the receptionist and say, hey, I'm from the ink and toner supply company. Can you go and tell me what model printer you have? So I can make sure I get you the right toner. And they go over and they say, oh, I have an HP 123. And you're like, okay, great. Can you go over and tell me what the IP address is? Just click here and tell me what that is. And once you give them that IP address and the model number, there is so much bad stuff we can do to you with that information to break into your network. And so a lot of times we'll use social engineers to get the information we need to make the technical part a lot easier for us.
Right. Okay. So I've always thought of social engineering as the bad guys.
Yep.
Like the people are like, oh, can you just change my seat number on my flight?
Yes.
Yep. You give the name and then they get all the information. So to use it for good. And that's like
Yes.
the whole
Yeah, and
ethical
that's the
hacker
whole thing.
part.
Like everything we do as penetration testers, it's the exact same things the bad guy does. The only difference is we do it with permission because the company invites us in. And at the end, we give them a report and say, here's all the bad things we did. And here's how we were able to do them. So you can go fix it and prevent the bad guys from doing the same thing to you.
And
Because
you
if I
train
can
them.
break in, the bad guy can break in too.
Okay. So you train them and then how to fix those problems.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's the whole role of like penetration testers. And as a penetration tester, we have network-based penetration testers, system-based penetration testers, people-based penetration testers, which we call social engineering, and things like that. And so the team will usually have 3 to 5 people as we go on an engagement to break into a large company like the Mayo Health Clinic or Johns Hopkins University or something like that.
And out of these 40 roles that you mentioned, about how many of these are you certifying for?
So we cover probably about 25 of those different roles because a lot of them have overlapping certifications. For instance, Security Plus is kind of the entry for almost all cybersecurity roles. It's kind of like the foundation. So pretty much all 40 use that role. And then some of them have additional roles like CEH or CNDA or things like that, depending on the role you're doing and how technical or non-technical it is.
We'll talk a little bit about how the pandemic and all of the lockdowns and the super huge fast drive to work from home has changed cybersecurity.
Oh yeah, it's a hugely vulnerable environment that we've created, right? So one of the things that we do when we move into a work from home area from a business perspective is what we're doing what's called deperimeterization. That's a really big word to say. We are removing the perimeter of our network. In the old days, the philosophy was, if you think about like a military base, or even an airport's probably a good example everybody knows, right? You go to the airport, you got to go through security checkpoints, right? And then you go through, the TSA checkpoint, you go through the gate to get on the plane, and there's all these different checkpoints, and those are all different perimeters. Well, in the old networks, that's what we did. We basically had, a fence around the building. We had firewalls to keep people out, and we could protect everything as long as it was in the building. But as soon as I gave you your laptop and you plugged it in at home, we have now deperimeterized you and we've moved you outside of our protected fence area, right? Our logical fence, which we call a firewall. And so that requires a lot of change in the way that we do the technologies to protect those devices and keep them still part of the consolidated environment. We all carry, smartphones with us nowadays, right? And all those smartphones are another extension of our network. When we have a laptop and we're sitting in the coffee shop, like you mentioned earlier, that's an extension of your network. And so as you're connecting to other networks, whether it's cellular or Wi-Fi in a coffee shop, you are now more vulnerable because there could be bad guys there that you're not knowing. For instance, you never want to connect to coffee shop Wi-Fi. You should always use your own hotspot on your mobile phone because when it says Starbucks Wi-Fi, you don't know if that's actually Starbucks' Wi-Fi or if it's me sitting with my laptop in the back collecting all your information as a bad guy, right? So those are the kind of things we have to think about. And this deperimeterization has created a lot of challenges for companies because, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, we were sending everybody home. We're like, crap, we need to do this and do it now. Just grab a laptop, throw it at a person and send them home so they can work. And it was a very unsecure method. Now that we're 2 years into it, most companies have gone through and redone our procedures. We've set up VPNs. We've added, home offices, like you mentioned, where we can let you tunnel into our network and give you protections to be able to overcome some of that. And because of that, it has made the cybersecurity, as a lot of other jobs are slowing down right now, cybersecurity are still hiring like crazy because there's still just so many jobs out there that they can't fill.
Right. I interviewed a guy, he's actually a friend of mine from college, Sean Riley. He worked for the government and they just were like pushing people that had never worked from home before. They had 2 days to push them out the door with all the stuff that they needed. So what kind of, I don't know, do you want to give an example of like some of the bad things that have happened that you guys have had to clean up in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the typical things that we have in the office environment, we have the same things out in town. Probably the biggest issue that we've had when we went with work from home is a lot of people who would work from coffee shops, right? Hey, I just got to get out of the house and I want to do something else. And at the beginning of the pandemic wasn't as big of an issue because everybody was still in lockdown. But as we started opening up, people were like, well, I'm still going to work from home, but I'm going to work from the coffee shop down the street.
From the unsecure Wi-Fi.
Yeah, for the unsecure Wi-Fi, right? Because again, the problem is it's not people like you and I who know what we're talking about that are the problem. It's all of the other employees, right? And you think about the government workforce, you mentioned the government workforce tends to be about 20 years older than most corporate workforces because people tend to stay with the government longer because of their pensions and things like that. And so what I've noticed when I worked in the government was when I looked around, most people around me were 40 to 60, not 20 to 40 like most corporations. And so when you take this older 40 to 60-year-old workforce and they don't work in technical roles normally, maybe they're a receptionist or I don't know, whatever other job they may have, a bookkeeper, whatever it is. And you said, okay, now go home and do this. And they don't have IT there helping them to keep secure, there's a lot more vulnerability. So things like phishing campaigns, smishing campaigns, which are text message campaigns, phishing campaigns or email campaigns, where people click a link. I'm sure you get like 20 of these a day on your phone, like, click here, your Amazon package is being redelivered, and you click on it, that's actually stealing your information, right? All those kind of things that affect your corporate workstations too, when people are working from home.
Right. The Mayo Clinic was pretty good about the phishing campaigns to help us learn how to spot them. And, good job. You helped, prevent, blah, blah, blah. And it teaches you to be suspicious of everything. When I interviewed Dan Wheeler, the email security guy, he talked a lot about, how much safer using Ethernet is compared to even just your home Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, anytime you're using wired over wireless, it has more inherent security than a wireless network, because wireless can be tapped into from other places. For instance, one of the things we used to have a course on Wi-Fi hacking, which literally taught you how to sit next to your neighbor's house and collect their data. And you can decrypt it and see what's in it, right?
How are you using this for good?
Well, yeah, again, that's one of the things we do as penetration testers is we have to break into the network, and the idea is break in any way you can. And so one of the easiest ways is Wi-Fi if they have it. So one of the things we used to do was we would drive around the corporate building you're testing, and we have a large antenna, we'd point it at the building and see if we could pick up the Wi-Fi. And so companies have to be aware of this and make sure that they keep their Wi-Fi signals inside of the building and not allow them to spread out. So if you ever lived in an apartment complex and you turn on your Wi-Fi and you're looking for a network, you see there's 30 networks, it's because everybody's right close to you with all these different repeaters. That's really vulnerable because I can connect to any of those repeaters and capture their traffic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about what kind of personality. Pretty much anybody could go into this.
Yeah.
And you don't want anybody that's straight out of high school. You need them to have some work experience. Have you had anyone young who did have early work experience? Like my son started taking coding classes when he was like 8, 9 years old. Do you have any of those people that had like teenage jobs?
So we have a couple in our company. We also have an internship program that we work with a couple of local high schools here in Orlando. So over the summer, we bring in some high school students that are usually 15, 16, 17 years old, and they work with us either as developers or video production or things like that to gain some of the skills. So it's the same thing you're talking about, like getting some kind of skill. And so like I think about those people, and if they're trying to get a cybersecurity job when they graduate high school, they're already going to have 2 summers worth of experience of doing video production for cybersecurity courses or programming for cybersecurity courses and things like that. We can then leverage that and help them work their resume to highlight those skills that they've learned there. And really a lot of it is finding the right keywords and the right skills you can highlight that are transferable to the job you're trying to go into. So, again, if I was working, when I was 16, I was working at Whole Foods Market as a grocery guy, putting boxes on the shelf. Yep. It's kind of hard to say that has cybersecurity ties, right? But if I was working, even as a cashier, there's things you do as a cashier that do tie into cybersecurity because you are working on an IT system, you're dealing with security, you're dealing with money, you're dealing with auditing at the end of every shift to make sure that the receipts total that you had and the money in your drawer actually matches up. And there's things that you can highlight and bring those into a cybersecurity position as well.
I want you to speak to the people who are sitting here listening to this right now, who might just be 18 years old and they maybe found this podcast on a Google search or something like that. Yeah. If you're going to give advice to someone who wants to enter the cybersecurity workforce in, say, 4 years, give them 4 years to get through some college. Yep. Or is college even necessary?
Not necessary. So it used to be that, college wasn't necessary. Then we went through a period where college was most definitely required. Now we're in this period where some companies care, some don't. There's a lot of tech companies that are moving away from the 4-year college degree because there's such a backlash against that, because college is stupid expensive and it's holding out people that could be doing a good job. And the weird thing is with the cybersecurity world, our stuff changes so fast that by the time you go through 4 years of college, what you learned is already becoming obsolete. So it's one of those things that certifications hold a lot more weight in our world than college degrees. There's a certain ceiling where you'll get to, and you won't be able to make manager or executive unless you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. But you can make $100,000 a year in cybersecurity without having a college degree. It's when you want to get to that 200,000 and beyond mark, that's when they start looking for college degrees as you move up the scale.
Okay, so definitely 18-year-olds should be listening to you right now. So keep talking.
Yeah. So, as an 18-year-old, really, if you're starting out brand new and you're interested in cybersecurity, the easiest and best way to get into cybersecurity is to start getting some system administration skills under your belt. So take a job at a help desk or as a field service technician. That's where you'll be working on some of these desktop computers, laptop computers, mobile phones, smartphones, tablets. You could work on network administration side, where we're working on the routers and switches of the network. Either of those are what we call feeder pipelines into cybersecurity. And so you'll go from doing one of those jobs for about a year or two. That is enough time to show, hey, I can do a job that's technical. I can succeed in a job that's technical. And now people will be interested in hiring you on into an entry-level cybersecurity analyst role. And those roles tend to pay right around $70,000 to $80,000 a year generally in the US. So that's a pretty good job 2 years out of high school.
Oh my gosh. And then could they be working on some of these certifications in the meantime?
Yes. Yeah. So these certifications, like as you're starting out, really the first three that you want to get if you're brand new is the CompTIA A+, CompTIA Network Plus, and CompTIA Security Plus certifications. A+ focuses on hardware and software. Network Plus focuses on networks. And Security Plus focuses obviously on security. But having those three, it gives you a really good foundation across all of IT, both the endpoints that people are using on a daily basis, as well as the backend systems and servers that we use to run all these things. And if you have those three certifications plus a year of help desk experience, you will have no problem moving into a cybersecurity role, making a lot more money, because help desk usually pays $10, $15 an hour. It's not great. A lot of it is work from home because it is basically answering phone calls all day. But getting that under your belt for 6 months or a year, and then being able to move up to a better position is really going to pay off for you.
What are some security measures that you've taken for your own home office and your own office?
Yeah, so the two biggest pieces of advice I can give you for securing your own home office is make sure your firewall is enabled. Thankfully, for most of us home office users, we get a built-in firewall modem from our cable provider or our fiber provider. And those do a pretty good job of keeping most of the bad stuff out. If you have Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, Spectrum, Roadrunner, any of those big companies, they do a pretty good job of trying to keep you protected. The other biggest thing that you really need to do is make sure you are updating your software. So if you are one of those people, when Windows says, I have an update, and you say, remind me later, don't do that. That's bad.
I think I did that for like several years.
Yes, like that makes you very vulnerable. And the reason it makes you vulnerable is that, Microsoft, for example, every Tuesday they put out any security patches they have. We call this Patch Tuesday. But as soon as they put out that patch and say, here's the patch you need to patch because there's a problem in your system, if you don't do it, the bad guys are taking that patch, they're reverse engineering it to figure out what is the vulnerability that Microsoft is trying to patch up, so we know what the hole is, and then we can figure out exploits for it. So generally, if Microsoft comes out with a patch on Tuesday, by Wednesday or Thursday, bad guys already have a way to exploit that vulnerability. So most of the time when bad guys are getting into your network, it's not because they did some kind of crazy hack. It's because you didn't patch the software and there's a hole in your boat and the water is coming in and you know that, and they're just coming in with the water, right? And so really, if you make sure your systems are patched and secured, that is going to do 99% of your benefit for you. Because if you're using Windows 10, Windows 11, they both come automatically with Windows Defender, which is antivirus, anti-malware, anti-ransomware stuff on there. So as long as you are using that and you're patching your system, you're going to be pretty safe for the most part.
And then I'm a Mac user, so I've always just kind of felt like I'm secure.
So Mac tends to be more secure than Windows, not because it's a better operating system, because I'm a Mac user as well. Like everything in my offices is Mac because we do a lot of video production. But I will tell you that, the reason Mac is more secure is only statistically, because they say, oh, look, there's 10 hacks for Windows for every one Mac hack, right? And it's like, well, yeah, there's also 10 Windows users for every one Mac user. So it's equivalent, right? It's the same thing with like Linux. People say, oh, Linux is so secure. It's like, well, yes, if you patch it, if you keep it up to date, and it's really more secure only because of the fact that there's less end users on it. So that's kind of where you end up seeing that. And really the big thing is for us as Mac users, we tend to be a little safer only because when people are spending the time to write a virus or malware, they're writing it for the most amount of users, right? And so if I was going to make an attack and I'm going to spend all that time doing it, I want to go after the 90% of the users, which is Windows, not the 10%, which is Mac. It's just like if you're going to build some vulnerability for a car. If you were smart, you would build that vulnerability for gas engines these days, because there's still 90% of the cars are gas engines, not electrics. And so it's that 90-10 split of where you spend your time.
Well, let's just kind of start to wrap up here. We got a few things to still cover. I wanted to hear a little bit more about your own, the way that you communicate with your team of 23 across 6 countries.
Yeah, so
you're working across time zones, and obviously you're asynchronous in some ways.
Yeah, so mostly we're asynchronous. So on a daily basis, most people can work when they want, where they want, and when they want. We don't tell them what hours they need to be there. So we don't say you have to be there from 9 to 5, because most of the stuff we do can be done at any time of the day or night. If I was in more of a traditional call center type situation, then yeah, we would need a 9 to 5, schedule for people around the world. One of the reasons we chose to have people around the world is, especially for our customer support team, if everybody was here in America, we would have to have people working at 3 a.m, because we have students in India and Pakistan and Japan and China and everywhere else, right? So we have students in 200 countries around the world. So by us having our customer support team spread out between Puerto Rico, Egypt, and the Philippines, no matter what time, if those people are working in their daytime hours, we have coverage for anybody calling us, no matter what time of the day or night it is. So that works out really well. The majority of our communication we use is on Slack, and that's what we use for asynchronous communication. Slack does a really good job allowing you to build up different channels, and you can do direct messaging and all the different integrations it has. So I think most of your audience probably has used Slack or will use Slack if they're doing a lot of work from home with other people. You could similarly use things like Microsoft Teams or Google Meets. We do use Google Workspace for our main collaboration. So that's our storage drive, our email, and things like that. But we still use Slack because we find it has a better interface for chat type communication.
I feel like I used like an earlier version of Skype in the day. So it was Slack like a very new version of the messenger system.
So it does the direct messaging just like you would get with like Teams or Slack or Skype. Skype kind of became into Teams. It got rolled in by Microsoft. But in addition to having like one-to-one chats where you and I can chat, we can also have group chats around different topics with different permissions. So in our groups, we have, an executive group that's just, the C-suite people. We have another group that's just the customer support people, another people that's our web development team, another one that's for our instructors. And then we can also do individual direct contact as well. So it's kind of Skype on steroids.
Is there any kind of project management type stuff built into that, or do you have to use something separate for that then?
So there's some minor project management stuff built into it, but not really. It's mostly a collaboration tool for sharing files and direct communication. You can do that video, audio, or text. For us, for project management, we use ClickUp. We used to use Asana, but I found Asana was quite expensive, especially as you grew your team. Worked really well with a couple of users. Once we got to 20 plus users, it was starting to cost us several $100s per month. So we moved over to ClickUp, which was about half the cost and double the features. We've been pretty happy with that. So it works really well. Both of those tools do have a free version also, but they're always really smart about, keeping the things you need at like the paid tier. So we end up having to go into the paid tier anyway.
Of course.
Right? Especially as you have like a larger team, like the paid tier starts making sense. And then the one thing that we do synchronously is every Monday morning, we do our Monday morning staff meeting with everybody around the world. So we do that 9 a.m. Eastern time on Monday. And again, we've got people all across the US. So we've got people in California and Washington. So for them, it's 6 a.m, which sucks. Our folks in the Philippines, it's like 10 at night right now because of daylight savings. So it kind of sucks for them. But we kind of make it work. And that was what we found to be the best time as we tried to sync everybody around the world. And basically when people get hired on, we say, hey, we do asynchronous for 99% of your stuff, but we do expect you to be here on Monday mornings for the staff meeting. And most people are okay with that. It's kind of the one thing they got to kind of give up in their schedule, being that they are working for this remote company. We do want everybody to sync up at least once a week.
And is it just like for an hour? Or is it just like announcements?
Yeah, generally it's about 30 to 60 minutes. We try to keep it at 30 minutes or less. Even with 23 people, generally we go around the teams. And so the executive starts first, which is our COO. And she'll kind of say, hey, here's what the team's working on. Here's what our focuses are this week. Okay, production team, what do you guys have? And then their lead will talk. And then the tech team and then the customer service team. So everybody gets a chance to let them know what's going on. And we find that to be really beneficial, especially as we're doing development, because we've been doing a lot of development of internal tools right now. So as our web developers are building something, they can say, hey, customer support team, just so you know, this new feature is rolling out this week. You need to be aware of this because it may cause issues that people are going to email in for. So those kind of things and having that cross-team coordination is really what we use that meeting for.
All right. So right now, you personally are not so much working from home as you are working remotely with your entire team, but you worked from home and you had team members coming into your home for a while. Do you have any advice for someone who might be working from home for the first time?
Yeah, so if you're going to work from home, I think there's two big things you need to consider, right? One is work from home right for you? Because not everybody is meant for work from home. I know this is a work from home podcast, so most of you probably self-selected to be work from home. But if you're thinking about going work from home, you need to think about how you like to work and how you like to operate. And what I mean by that is there are some people who are completely happy being alone in a room all day, head down, just get the work done. And there's other people that need human interaction. We have one person on our team, and they were with us for maybe about 6 months, and they were just a really friendly, outgoing person, but they were going crazy working from home because they had nobody else to communicate with all day, right? Because a lot of the people on their team were in the Philippines or in Egypt or whatever it was. And they're like, oh, well, it's daytime for me. Why isn't this person answering me when I try to chat with them? Well, they're sleeping. It's 3 a.m. there, right? But just knowing your personality type and whether you get energy from being around people or being alone is important. Because as we work from home, a lot of times we are, I don't know about you, but I get exhausted doing Skypes and Zooms all day long. And like a lot of times when you're working from home, you spend a lot of time in virtual meetings and it's just draining. So I think that's important to know yourself. Kind of, we talked about that earlier with cybersecurity as well, right? You have to know your own personality to pick the right job for you. And one of the things that you're picking in work from home is not just the job, but the atmosphere and the environment. I tend to be one of those people that I work really well by myself in a room, like lock the door, leave me alone, I'm good. But I know other people that just drives them crazy. So keep that in mind.
And a lot of people that are like that end up having to work in like the co-working spaces.
Yes.
Like a shared office, even though it's not your office, it's a shared office with other people. So you have the human interaction, or coffee shops. Some people just go to be around people, even though they're not interacting.
Yes, exactly. Right. And some people are very checklist oriented. And so you can have your checklist and say, these are the things I'm going to get done today as I work from home, and you'll be very successful. If you are one of those people that's kind of need to be around the people for collaboration, and there are some things that you're working on that it's really easier if you can get people together in the same room. Even Zoom is not a replacement for a conference room sometimes, and so those are kind of the different things that you got to think about. And then I think the other thing is when you're deciding to work from home is, if you're going to work from home, try to dedicate yourself a space in your house that you can shut the door and make yourself working hours. Because one of the biggest challenges I find with work from home is actually going to work sometimes, right? There's times where I will work a 16-hour day, and there's other times where I'm like, man, do I really have to go and do something for an hour? I just don't want to, right? And because you have the flexibility when you work from home, you kind of have to put some self-imposed boundaries in so that you won't end up working 16 hours every day and ignoring your family. But conversely, you don't want to also work an hour a day and ignore your job. And so you got to kind of feel that out. And I think it also depends on what kind of work from home job you are. For us, we don't track hours. So for us, everybody is salary based. We work on production. So we know that, this week you should be able to edit, 40 videos, for instance. And if you only did 10 videos, I'll be like, hey, why'd you only do 10 videos? And it may be that something came up, you had to go to the doctor, whatever it was. But we don't sit there and count your hours. Okay, you worked for 3 hours and 23 minutes today. Oh no, bag you. We care more about, did you finish the thing that we wanted you to finish? And sometimes people finish in 2 hours. Sometimes they'll finish in, 10 hours, right? Sometimes there's high production, low production, and it all ends up in the end it all washes out at the end kind of equally.
Right. Anything else? Any final thoughts about work from home that we haven't already hit on?
The other thing I would recommend is if you're going to work from home, especially as you start if you're running your own business, I would get a dedicated computer for your office, for your work, and one for your play. By keeping those separate, again, this is kind of the personal kind of keeping yourself bifurcated between yourself, but also it helps secure things, because if you're only doing work things on a work computer, you're less likely to get viruses, bugs, and phishing emails and all the other stuff. Because if you're sitting there and scrolling on, I don't know, TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is, you could be bringing in bad things into your system. And so I like to keep my personal stuff away from my work stuff and keep those on. If you can't afford 2 separate computers, at least have 2 separate accounts. So I have a Jason account and a Jason work account. And that way, all your work bookmarks are set up in one place, all your play bookmarks are in the other place, and it keeps things separate that way.
And it gives you privacy as well.
Yes. Yeah. And it keeps those things separate, right? Especially if you're working on a, for a company and they issue you a laptop. Remember, the company can see what you're doing on that laptop. So you shouldn't do anything personal on it because somebody could be watching it.
Absolutely. All right. Jason, I appreciate hanging out, and I wish we could talk a little bit longer, but I want to give you a few minutes to give information about how people can find your program and you, especially the mastermind type thing that you're doing. And I know we mentioned where we can find your Udemy, but why don't we try to figure out where you would find your cyber path?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're interested in any of the certifications that we teach, you can always go to diontraining.com, DION training.com. And we have all of our courses there that will help you be able to get certified to do these work from home positions. If you're interested in the cybersecurity career path, if you're brand new to all of this, you're like, what is he really talking about? What are all these different jobs? Check out the Your Cyber Path podcast, which is yourcyberpath.com. And that is our podcast that talks all about the cybersecurity career, how to get hired, how resumes work, how interviews work, how negotiations work, all that kind of stuff. And the mastermind program is called Your Cyber Path Pro. That'll be opening up in January again. And you'll be able to find details for that at yourcyberpath.com once that opens up again. For right now, if you want to connect with us, if you go onto yourcyberpath.com on the front page, there is a place you can enter in your email, and we will send you an email once every 2 weeks when the new podcast episodes come out and tell you a little bit more about cybersecurity and the things that you could be doing in that world. And it's just a great career field to get into because it's not going anywhere. It's had a negative unemployment rate for about 5 years, and it's continuing to be negative unemployment, which means everybody who wants a job has a job, and there's still more jobs.
Wow.
Because there's just so much demand in the cybersecurity world that we can't hire people fast enough.
So I know we're trying to wrap it up, but when I was working as medical transcriptionist with Mayo Clinic, people kept asking me, how can I get into work like yours? And I'm like, don't. It's a dying field. They are eliminating us. And they did. They laid off and separation packaged, hundreds and hundreds of people. And so obviously this would be a really good path for my old transcription friends to try to get into, because they've got some of the, technical skills and, work from home skills. So just go ahead and get a few certifications and you're golden, right?
And if you really love transcription, there's stuff to do in transcription work from home too. I know we use a company called Rev to do all of our audio and video captioning for all of our courses. And they basically just take our videos, chop them up into pieces, send them out to a whole team of Rev transcriptionists. They manually transcribe what I'm saying into the captions, and then it comes back to us. And so that's another work from home opportunity for those who really like to listen and type out what they're hearing.
I didn't realize that they chopped it up. That helps me understand how they get it back so fast.
Yes. Yep.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So what they usually do is when you upload a video, they do the automatic captions first, and then the person just watches and corrects the automatic captions. And that's how they're able to turn it around so quickly, because the automatic captions are about 95% accurate anyway. Yeah. So it does a really good job for you.
That's exactly what we were doing in the end at the transcription stuff, because we were using voice recognition technology. It's just we had to fix all the mistakes.
Well, especially in technical fields, we find that's a big problem for us, because we talk about a lot of things like, I'll talk about HDMI, right? Like, hey, I have this HDMI TV and it operates at 1080p. And when they transcribed it, they said HTML instead of HDMI. And they said 10ADP, like the payroll company, not 1080p, 1080. So sometimes things like that mess up because they're technical. And that's why you still need a live person to fix some of these things. But instead of having 10 transcriptionists, you can now get away with one transcriptionist because the AI does most of the work for you.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jason. I'm going to really quick speak to my listeners. If anybody is interested in being a guest like Jason was today, I do have a form you can fill out. Just give me a few ideas about what you already are doing, how much you work, what do you like to do, what do you want to talk about, and do you have any interesting stories? So go ahead and reach out to me at april@yesiworkfromhome.com. You can go to the website, yesiworkfromhome.com, and find all the podcast episodes, find the video, the audio. We've got show notes on them if you want to get a little preview of what we've done. I used to do transcripts and it was just too much work. So Jason, thank you so much for being my guest today. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks, April. All
right. This has been Dion with April Malone and Yes, I Work From Home, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.